You think you'd make it in 1800? You wouldn't, not even close. And I'm not talking about missing your phone or your coffee maker. I'm talking about the fact that basic survival looked nothing like what your brain is wired to handle. Let's see how long you'd last. Here's what most people miss. Life in 1800 wasn't just harder, it was structured completely differently. Every single system you rely on didn't exist. And we're going to walk through exactly what that meant, piece by piece, until you understand why even the toughest person you know would have been in serious trouble. So, 1800, you wake up, it's dark. Not turn on a light dark, actual dark, because the sun isn't up yet, and if you're not working by first light, you're already behind. No alarm clock, obviously. You just wake up when your body decides it's time, or when the rooster starts losing its mind outside. Your bed is basically a wooden frame with a mattress stuffed with straw or corn husks. Maybe horsehair if your family had money. It makes noise every time you move. You've probably got lice in there to just living with you. That's normal. The cold hits different. Your house, if you even want to call it that, has gaps. Actual gaps in the walls where wind comes through. There's no insulation. The fireplace in the main room is the only heat source. And it went out overnight because nobody's keeping a fire going for 16 hours straight. So you're waking up in a 40-degree room, maybe colder. You get dressed in the same clothes you wore yesterday and the day before. Because you own maybe 2 outfits total, and washing them is a full-day event that you definitely don't have time for right now. Food, breakfast is whatever didn't spoil, you've got no refrigerator, right? So everything is either dried, salted, smoked, or picked. Fresh food exists, but only if it's currently growing or you just killed it. Milk goes bad in hours during summer. Meat goes bad in a day. Your breakfast is probably bread, maybe some butter if the cow cooperated, maybe some leftover porridge. The bread is dense, hard, nothing like what you're imagining. It's fuel. That's it. And let's talk about the cow for a second, because this matters. If your family has a cow, someone has to milk it every single day, twice a day, actually, morning and evening. Miss a milking and the cow gets mastitis. Then you've got no milk and possibly a dead cow, which means you've just lost a massive chunk of your family's survival capacity. I'm not exaggerating. A cow in 1800 is worth about $20, which is roughly 8 months of wages for a laborer. You don't just lose a cow water, you need water, so you walk to the well. It could be 50 feet, it could be half a mile, depending on where you live. You're carrying heavy buckets, and this water, it's not clean. You don't know that, though. Germ theory doesn't exist yet. Cholera, typhoid, dysentery, all spreading through water nobody realizes is contaminated. Boiling water helps, but most people don't bother unless they're making tea or coffee. And coffee costs about a day's wages per pound. So that's not happening regularly. Here's the thing about work in 1800. If you're not working, you're not eating. There's no safety net, no unemployment, no calling in sick. Sick means you still work, just slower. Injured means you work through it or your family starches. Most people are farmers. And farming in 1800 means you're outside, manually doing everything. Plowing a field takes days. You're walking behind a horse or an ox, holding wooden handles attached to a metal blade, forcing it through soil for 10, 12 hours. Your hands blister, then callous, then crack and bleed when it's cold. Harvest time is chaos. You've got maybe 2 weeks to get everything in before weather ruins it. Entire families, including kids as young as 5 or 6, working dawn to dusk, no weekends, no breaks, just constant movement, because if the crops fail, if you don't get enough stored for winter, people die, your family dies. That's the actual stakes. Let me give you a comparison. An average farmer in 1800 could produce enough food for maybe 5 people total. Today, one farmer feeds about 155 people. That's not because people were lazy back then. It's because the work was impossibly inefficient. Everything required human or animal power. Everything. Medicine. You get sick, really sick, and there's not much anyone can do. Doctors exist, but they're expensive and they're wrong about almost everything. They still believe in balancing humors. They'll bleed you, which just makes you weaker. Infection kills constantly. A cut on your hand gets infected. There's no antibiotics. it spreads. You lose the hand or you die. Women dying in childbirth is common enough that everyone knows someone who's gone through it. Infant mortality is around 40%. 4 out of every 10 kids born don't make it to age 5. Dentistry is nightmarish. You get a toothache, it either stops on its own or someone pulls it without anesthesia. They just hold you down and yank, or you live with the pain until infection sets in and then you hope it doesn't kill you. Pain is just part of life. Constant low-level pain. Your back hurts from manual labor. Your joints hurt from old injuries that never healed, right? You've probably got intestinal parasites making you feel tired all the time. Nobody's sleep is broken up by cold, by hunger, by illness, by having to check on animals or protect property. And speaking of property, theft is a huge problem. You don't have a police force that responds to calls. In rural areas, you don't have law enforcement at all unless you ride to the nearest town and hope someone cares. So people steal livestock, tools, food, anything valuable. You protect what's yours or you lose it. Winter, though, winter is the real test. Everything gets harder. Days are short, work is limited, food stores have to last until spring. If you miscalculated, if your harvest wasn't enough, you're rationing in January and you've got 3 more months to go. People lose weight every winter, they just do, because there's not enough food. Heating a house requires firewood, cords and cords of firewood, which means someone spent the entire summer and fall cutting trees, splitting logs, stacking them. If you run out of firewood in February, you're burning furniture, fences, whatever you can. Clothes wear out. You can't just buy new ones. Fabric is expensive. Making fabric takes forever. Wool has to be sheared, cleaned, carded, spun into thread, woven into cloth, then cut and sewn. Cotton's even worse because you've got to pick it, process it, same steps. A basic shirt represents weeks of labor. So when something tears, you patch it, then you patch the patch. You wear clothes until they literally fall apart. Social life is weird because everyone's isolated. Your neighbors might be miles away. You see the same 20 people your entire life. If you're lucky, a traveling preacher comes through once a month, maybe a peddler selling goods a few times a year. That's your connection to the outside world. News travels slow. Something happens in Washington, you hear about it 6 weeks later. Maybe education. Most people can't read. Schools exist in some places, but they cost money and they take kids away from work. So unless your family can afford to lose your labor, you're not going. You learn what your parents know. Farming, basic skills, oral tradition. That's it. Entertainment is minimal. No TV, no internet, obviously, no radio. Books are rare and expensive. Most people own maybe one book, the Bible. After dark, you're sitting by a fireplace light, maybe talking, maybe doing small tasks. Then you sleep because candles are expensive and you've got to be up before dawn anyway. The smell, though, nobody warns you about the smell. People bathe maybe once a week, if that. Full immersion baths are a luxury. Most people do a quick wash with a rag and a bucket. Deodorant doesn't exist. Perfume exists, but costs a fortune. So everyone just smells. You smell. They smell. Everything smells. The animals smell. The outhouse smells. Garbage just piles up outside until someone deals with it. And the outhouse, you don't have a toilet. You've got a wooden box with a hole over a pit. In winter, that's a 20-yard walk through snow in the dark. You're not doing that at night. So most people keep a chamber pot indoors, which you then have to empty in the morning into the pit by hand. Crime and violence are handled locally. Someone wrongs you. You either handle it yourself or you gather a group and handle it together. Dueling is still legal in some places. People shoot each other over insults. The concept of proportional response is fluid. Here's what gets me. Pain tolerance was just different. Not because people were tougher, but because there was no alternative. You worked through pain because not working meant dying. Children worked through pain. Everyone just accepted that life hurt and you kept going. And yet people fell in love. They had kids. They built things. They created communities. They laughed. Because humans adapt. They find joy in tiny moments. a good harvest, a healthy baby, a neighbor helping raise a barn. That's what life was. But you stepping into 1800, you'd struggle with day one. The physical labor alone would destroy you. Then the isolation, the boredom, the discomfort, the lack of medical care, the food situation. Within a week, you'd be desperate to leave. We've built elaborate systems to protect ourselves from everything people in 1800 dealt with daily. And those systems work so well we forget they exist. Until you imagine removing them. Then you realize how fragile we actually are, how dependent, how specialized. So no, you wouldn't survive 1800. Not because you're weak, but because you're optimized for a completely different world. And that world, the one you live in now, is pretty remarkable. Even with all its problems, if this made you see your Tuesday differently, that's the point. Now, you know,